American intervention in Philippine independence. Spanish-American War of 1898. Cuba, a Spanish colony in West Indies who revolted against its colonial master. February 1895. Time of rebellion of Cuba. Governor General Valeriano Weyler, commander of the Spanish forces in Cuba, who established camps for the rebels. President William McKinley, who sent the U.S. battleship Maine to Cuba for evacuating American citizens in case of revolution. Enrique Ducoy de Lome, minister to the United States. A letter from him had been stolen from the post office in Havana, was published in the New York Journal. This letter featured President McKinley as a would-be politician. February 9, 1898. Time of publishing the letter in the New York Journal. February 15, 1898. Start of battleship of Americans at Havana, which resulted in the loss of about 260 crewmen. Randolph Firo, the father of the yellow journalism. According to him, the battleship was blown up and sunk not by the Spaniards but by the American spies in Cuba to provoke the war. April 11, 1898. McKinley recommended direct American intervention in Cuba to the U.S. Congress. April 24, 1898. Declaration of war against the U.S. April 25, 1898. Spanish-American War began.
Battle of Manila Bay. April 25, 1898. George Dewey proceeded to the Philippines with 4 armored cruisers, 2 gunboats, and a revenue cutter. They entered the Manila Bay in the early morning of May 1, 1898 by Admiral Patricio Montoro. Attempts at gaining Filipino support. After defeating the fleet, Dewey blockaded Manila. At this time, the Governor-General of the country was Basilio Agustin, the successor of Primo de Rivera. He appealed to the Filipino people to assist Spain in their struggle for the survival from American aggression. The Consultative Assembly, headed by Pedro Paterno, the negotiator of the Pact of BT-GAPT na bato, and who appealed to the Filipino to support Spain. Filipino-American collaboration. Governor-General Primo de Rivera, who disposed 400,000 pesos under the terms of Pact of BT-GAPT na bato. Isabelo Atacho wanted the money to be apportioned among themselves. His proposal was rejected by Aguinaldo, so he was sued in the Hong Kong Supreme Court. Ronceville Wildman, American consul in Hong Kong. He suggested that Aguinaldo establish a dictatorial government which was needed in the prosecution of the war against Spain. Hong Kong Junta. On May 4, they decided that Aguinaldo should return to the Philippines to lead the struggle against Spaniards. Wildman. Aguinaldo gave him 117,000 pesos to be used in purchasing guns and ammunition. Aguinaldo's return to the Philippines. Consul Wildman arranged Aguinaldo's return on the revenue cutter McCulloch, which he and his companions boarded at night to avoid rousing and suspicion of Spanish consul in Hong Kong. Constantino identified 4 major forces on the historical stage. Meses still believed in and fought for the revolutionary objectives of the Katipunan. Don Emilio Aguinaldo returned in order to initiate a new revolution, and so no sooner had he given the order to rise on the 31st of last month when several towns anticipating the revolution. Filipino priest Dr. Don Jose Burgos, Don Mariano Gomez, and Don Jacinto Zamora were hanged whose innocent blood was shed due to the intrigues of these so-called religious corporations. January 21, 1872, the decree sentence issued by the Council of State in the appeal in the administrative case interposed by the secular clergy against the royal orders. The first spark of revolution broke in Caloocan, spread out to Santa Mesa, and continued its course to the adjoining regions of the province, where the unequal heroism of its inhabitants fought a one-sided battle against superior forces of General Blanco and General Polavea for a period of 3 months, without proper arms nor ammunitions, except bolos, pointed bamboos, and arrows. Lastly, it was resolved unanimously that this nation, already free and independent as of this day, must use the same flag which up to now is being used, the white triangle, signifying the distinctive emblem of the famous Society of Katipunan, which by means of its blood compact inspired the masses to rise revolution. 3 stars, signifying the 3 principal islands of this archipelago, Luzon, Mindanao, and Panay, where this revolutionary movement started. the sun, representing the gigantic steps made by the sons of the country along the path of progress and civilization. The 8 rays, signifying the 8 provinces: Manila, Cavite, Bulacan, Pampanga, Nueva Ecija, Bataan, Laguna, and Batangas. The Filipinos gained victory after victory. June 1898, almost the whole Luzon, except for the port of Cavite and Manila, had fallen into the hands of Filipino rebels. The Filipino siege of Manila. When the Spanish Navy was destroyed, many Spaniards had taken refuge at Intramuros or the walled city. Dewey did not bombard the city after winning the Battle of Manila Bay. Aguinaldo offered the option of surrender 3 times, with generous terms, to Governor General Agustin, but these were rejected as he also was awaiting reinforcement from Spain, which never came. The Aguinaldo dictatorship. Mariano Ponce drawn up a draft of constitutional plan that Aguinaldo brought when he arrived from Hong Kong. May 24, 1898, Aguinaldo issued a decree formally establishing such form of government, albeit temporary in nature. The decree also nullified the orders issued under the Biak na Bato Republic. Apolinario Mabini, Aguinaldo's unofficial advisor during this time, who objected to this plan. Mabini stressed the need to reorganize the government first into one that could prove to foreign powers its independence and stability before declaring independence. Aguinaldo, however, prevailed over Mabini. Proclamation of Philippine Independence. June 12, 1898. Philippine independence was proclaimed in the presence of a huge crowd at the ancestral home of the General Emilio Aguinaldo between 4 and 5 in the afternoon in Cavite El Viejo, now known as Kawit. This event was highlighted by the following: the unfurling of the Philippine national flag, stood in Hong Kong by Marcela Agoncillo, Lorenza Agoncillo, and Delfina Herbosa. The playing of the Marcha Pilipina Magdalo by the Francisco de Malabon Marching Band as the country's national anthem, and the reading of the Declaration of Philippine Independence, written by Amborio Rianzares Bautista.
Surrender negotiations and the mock battle of Manila Bay. While the walled city was under naval blockade from the Manila Bay in June and July 1898, Aguinaldo had already accomplished a complete tight land siege around the city. For the 4th time, on July 7, Aguinaldo made another demand for the Spanish general to surrender. The Spanish official, however, refused to do so upon instruction from Madrid. He was ordered that if it was inevitable to surrender, he should surrender to the Americans, not to the Filipinos. After fresh American troops arrived on June 30, July 17, and July 31, 1898, Dewey started negotiating with Governor General Agustin and with Belgian Consul Andre, acting as mediator for the surrender of the Spaniards. Word about this reached the peninsular government, which immediately replaced Agustin with the General Fermin Aldene. The two powers then very secretly agreed to stage a mock battle between them on one condition: that no Filipino troops would be allowed to enter Manila. Clearly, an act of betrayal of the Filipinos on the part of the Americans. All along, Aguinaldo and his forces guarded the city and waited for the Spaniards to give in to hunger and thirst and surrender. After the secret deal between the Americans and the Spaniards, General Merritt, who had overall command of the American forces, decided to conduct the offensive against Manila from the side of Manila Bay. On the eve of the mock battle, General Anderson, commander of the 1st Reinforcement, even telegraphed Aguinaldo, warning him not to let his troops enter Manila without permission from the American commander, or else they would be shot. The Filipinos, however, were not completely left out of the assault. On the dark and rainy morning of August 13, 1898, they amassed on the right side of the General Arthur MacArthur, who had led the 3rd American Reinforcement for the battle. The Americans started their mock attack, with the Filipinos unsuspectingly fighting with all their might. There was token resistance from the Spaniards. At about 11:20 a.m., the Spaniards raised the flag of surrender, but it was only noticed at noon. By 5 p.m., surrender negotiations were completed. The Spanish authorities agreed to surrender the Spaniards and the Filipino volunteers in the city on the condition that the Americans would safeguard the city and its inhabitants, churches, and religious worship. The next day, August 14, the document stating the terms of surrender was formally signed by representatives of both parties. General Merritt then announced the establishment of the military government. It turned out that the mock battle need not have been staged, as the two powers had already been negotiating to end hostilities. On August 12, Washington DC time, American President McKinley issued a proclamation directing the suspension of all military operations against the Spaniards. However, this did not reach Dewey as he had cut the cable between Manila and the outside world after winning the Battle of Manila Bay. By the time he received it on August 16, the surrender agreement had been signed. End of Filipino-American collaboration in Spanish rule. Meanwhile, General Diego Villos, the successor of Jaudenes, transferred the headquarters of the Spanish government to Iloilo and took command of the Spanish army in the south. Martin Delgado, leader of the Visayan Patriots, however, compelled Villos to leave Iloilo on December 24. From Iloilo, General Villos moved to Zamboanga. Meanwhile, American troops occupied Jolo on May 19, 1899, displacing the Spanish garrison in the area. By November 1899, all Spanish forces in the south were shipped to Spain. The Treaty of Paris of 1898. Peace commissioners of Spain and the US met in Paris, France, to draft a peace treaty in Paris on October 1, 1898, to end the 6-month hostilities between these two countries. The American Peace Commission was composed of William R. Day, Senator Cashman K. Avis, William T. Pride, Senator George Gray, and the Honorable White Lorry. The Spanish Commission was headed by Don Eugenio Montero Rio, the President of the Senate. Jules Cambon, a French diplomat, also negotiated on Spain's behalf. The American commissioners negotiated in a hostile atmosphere because all Europe except England was sympathetic to the Spanish side. The final treaty was concluded in Paris on December 10, 1898 and provided for the following. Spain agreed to remove all soldiers from Cuba and recognize American occupation of the area. Spain ceded Guam and Puerto Rico to the United States. The United States compensated Spain for its losses with a payment of $20 million.
Prelude to American Regime. The First Philippine Republic. The Malolos Congress. By virtue of the decree of June 18, 1898, Aguinaldo called for the election of delegates to the Revolutionary Congress, which Mabini envisioned to be a mere advisory body of the President. In the morning of September 15, 1898, the historic Malolos Congress was convened by Aguinaldo at Barasuain Church in Malolos, Bulacan. In his message to the delegates, Aguinaldo gave his due respect to the people for their patriotism and heroism and briefed them on their task of writing a constitution for the country. September 16, 1898, an election of officers was held before proceeding with its work of drafting a constitution. Among those elected were Pedro A. Paterno, the very same man who mediated the betrayal of the revolution at Biak na Bato as president, Benito Legarda as Vice President, Gregorio Araneta as First Secretary, and Pablo Ocampo as Second Secretary. On June 12, 1898, in Cavite El Viejo, one of the most significant acts of this body was proclaimed the ratification of the Philippine independence. The drafting of the historic Malolos Constitution. Mabini's objections. The Congress, which Mabini had envisioned to be a mere advisory, not legislative, body of the President, proposed that Constitution be drafted, overruling Mabini's objections. He had meritoriously argued that the Constitution had to be framed under peaceful conditions, but he was outvoted by the majority under Paterno. Constitutional Program of the Philippine Republic. Mabini's proposed a constitution and it was rejected. There were two other constitutional plans considered by this Revolutionary Congress. Paterno Plan, based on the Spanish Constitution. Calderon Plan, based on the constitutions of France, Belgium, Mexico, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Brazil. Calderon Plan was finally used as basis in drafting the Malolos Congress after deliberation among the delegates. The most controversial provision in this draft was the union of church and state. Of course, delegates in this Congress strongly opposed the proposal of making Catholicism a state religion. November 29, 1898, the Malolos Congress approved the Constitution. However, Aguinaldo refused to sign it. On January 21, 1899, when Mabini's objections were satisfied, the Malolos Constitution was promulgated. Aguinaldo finally proclaimed it as the fundamental charter of the land. The government of the Republic consisted of three branches: executive, judicial, and legislative. Executive power was vested in the president, elected by the legislature. Assisting the president was cabinet, which came to be known as the council of the government. Legislative power was exercised by unicameral assembly of representatives, whose members were directly elected by people. When the lawmaking body was not in session, legislative powers of the government were exercised by a permanent commission consisting of 7 assemblymen. Judicial power was vested in the Supreme Court of Justice and such other courts as may be created by law. A Chief Justice selected by the Assembly of Representatives headed this branch of government. Apparently, the lawmaking body was more powerful than the executive department because it was responsible for electing the president and selecting the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Newspapers of the Revolution. On September 1898, to sustain the spirit of the Filipino nationalism, the Malolos Republic established its own newspaper, El Heraldo de la Revolucion. Later on, its name was changed to Heraldo Filipino, Indies Official, and Gaceta Filipina. The privately owned newspapers also circulated in the public. The most famous of these newspapers was La Independencia, edited by Antonio Luna. Its maiden issue came out on September 3, 1898. Some of the writers and columnists who promoted the spirit of Filipino nationalism were Cecilio Apostol, Jose Palma, Rafael Palma, Fernando Maria Guerrero, Epifanio de los Santos, Rosa Sevilla, and Florentina Arellano. Diplomatic activities of the First Philippine Republic. While the Philippines had already proclaimed the independence and established the Malolos Republic, the country did not become a member of the family of nations. This is because no country in the world recognized the Philippines despite the diplomatic efforts exerted by the Filipino diplomats like Felipe Agoncillo, Mariano Ponce, Faustino Di Chauco, Antonio Rojas, Juan Luna, and Heriberto Zarcal. Felipe Agoncillo, who was given the task of persuading the US government to recognize the Malolos Republic. His efforts proved futile as the United States then had decided to make the Philippines an American territory. With the outbreak of Filipino-American War, the Malolos Republic was destined to die a natural death.